Every industry has its own task, and in the world of advertising, George Lois is a supernova, the original Mr. Big idea. He's the one who triggered the creative revolution in the 60s and is better known as the Superman of Madison Avenue. He introduced and popularized the Xerox culture. He made a failing MTV a huge success with his I Want My MTV campaign and made a completely unknown Tommy Hilfiger popular with just one ad. I could go on and on. I had the pleasure to meet none other than George Lois himself here in Cannes, and what an eye-opener that was. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I give you George Lois, the original madman. Thank you so much for joining us, George, the original madman. It is truly a pleasure and a privilege.
I'm afraid I am being called and have been called and continue to be called the original madman. And you must understand, I hate madmen.
Unfortunately, Mad Men, the series, is the only reference to people like me of what advertising was in the 60s.
You are saying exactly to me what a lot of the young professional women say. They said, geez, it must have been wonderful back then. I said, yes, it was. But, you know, it's just like, the Mad Men show really shows what it's like. No, it doesn't. The 60s was a heroic period in advertising, in mass media, heroic, because I left Doyle Dane, where I was very important art director, and I started the second creative agency in the world. Bill Bernbach, who did the first one, thought I was crazy. Everybody thought I was crazy. They didn't think it could be successful. There could only be one creative agency. I started it, and we immediately were successful. Before you knew it, there were like 7 or 8 terrific creative agencies, and everybody in America thinks of that period, if they look at that period, as, wow, what advertising. And it only came from like 6 or 7 agencies against trillions of dollars of advertising. It was the creative revolution. So that's the problem. Young women, men too, but young women say, oh, what, you want to work for, would you work for those bums? all they try to do is stuff you.
So basically what you're saying is, if that depiction is completely off the mark, just take us back. Take me back to how it was truly in the 60s and how different is it today?
The only place that was where advertising was great was Doyle Dane Bernbach. It started in the mid-50s. And it was because a man by the name of Bill Bernbach, who was a copywriter, was lucky enough to go to an agency where there was a young art director, who was the first modern art director called Paul Rand, and who wrote his own copy and did his own work. And he was only a young man, and he was on top of the world because he did great work. And what Bill Bernbach learned is, my God, if you work with a great graphic designer who can create images, advertising could be 10 times better. Yeah, of course. So he started an agency called Doyle Dane Bernbach. It was the first agency with the art director. Art directors and agencies, all agencies, would sit in their rooms with their thumbs up their ass, waiting for a copywriter and a typewriter to come in with copy, where everything worked out and say, here, do a layout. Art directors were not involved in any way, shape, or form with the creative conception of advertising. And I became one of the great art directors, in the late 50s. And there was no womanizing, and there's no bullshit, and there was no group growth. There were no people getting together to work on things. No, an art director and writer worked alone.
Sure.
There was no analysis. Analysis paralysis, where they sit and go, no, I decided we're going to do it. We do it. Boom, bada bang.
So, is that the problem today? That people are, succumbing to clients. They believe they're inferior.
If you think people are stupid, if you think people are dumb, you'll do dumb work.
And that is the problem today?
One of the big problems, sure. The other thing that young people today, I've heard them say it a million times, is you should never let people know that you're asking for something. I say, excuse me? It's called advertising. When I do advertising, I want my MTV. I say it a million times. I thought, they really think it's wrong. They're embarrassed about selling. Oh my God! If you're embarrassed about selling, what in the world are you doing in advertising? I love selling, but I love selling on the way I want to sell, and I love selling the product I want to sell. Most commercials today, and you can watch it for 30 seconds or 50 seconds and say to yourself, what was that, and what was the client? Happens all the time. And I've taught in classes where, I say, Mr. Lois, but yeah, you say that, but you know, did you see that? And they would describe a commercial to me, a beer commercial. And everybody in class, oh yeah, we like that. What do you think of that? I said, yeah, I remember the commercial. Now, what brand were they selling? And the kids in the room were having an argument. And they named 4 different brands, and they were having an argument. What was the brand?
Right. I believe that you convinced the Xerox CEO, Joe Wilson, to not change his name. Is that accurate?
No, what happened is we got the account, and first thing we said to him is, okay, your name is Lois Xerox, and you have to change it just to Xerox, but Lois Xerox. Xerox is interesting. People don't know the word, but Xerox, it'll be xerography, and it's also, even if you don't know the word, Xerox is an interesting word.
Sure.
And they said, George, the inventor of xerography, Chester Carlson, got a company called Lois up in Rochester, and they worked with him to develop the Xerox 914 press machine. So we have to have your name as a part of the brand. I said, you mean you owe it to them? I said, exactly. I said, well, that's stupid. So I argued, and they wouldn't give in until they fired me that night, that day.
Yeah.
And they called the next day and they said, well, maybe you're right. Come back and show us some advertising. So we're doing a commercial. Run it 2 weeks later. Terrific commercial. Joe Wilson, we run it. Joe Wilson said, oh my God, George, people are so excited about it. I mean, everybody thought Xerox was an antifreeze. Some people call it Xerox. Antifreeze. Oh my God, you're right. You were right. Right, hang up. About an hour later, I get a call from the FCC, Federal Communications, somebody, for a cease and desist. Because they said people complained, a company by the name of A.B. Dick, company aptly named. It's an Americanism. And a little girl can possibly make a copy that easily.
Wow.
So I said, interesting. Call them back. I said, can I call you back in a couple of days? They said, yeah. I called them back and I said, listen, I set up a demonstration for you, and I want your people to come to see it. So they showed up, shot the same exact commercial, except instead of using a little girl, I used a chimpanzee. A week later, I ran the little girl commercial at the beginning of a news show, and the chimpanzee and America went crazy. It was a $250,000 account, which was like a nice account back then, and in 2 days they made it a $9 million account.
This whole new age talk about digital, right?
Yeah.
There's so much focus on technology, digital.
Yeah.
You know, the Facebook, Twitter.
That's all they talk about. They don't talk about creativity. Articles are written by these 8 stories about these biggest agencies in the world. I mean, there's 5 or 6 only, you know. And they're in Fortune and all they do is they talk about this new age of digital, this and that, and Facebook and you know, media, social media, blah, 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 and they never talk about creativity. Business world is group growth. Everybody gets together and they 10, 20, 30 people. Sometimes they say, okay, group of 10, a group of 10, a group of 10, and then you decide something, and then you come in, and it's called group growth. You know what growth is? It's like you're in the dark. And then after they make a decision, it's analysis paralysis. Then they discuss it and beat it to death. And there's always somebody who says, now. And then they make a decision. Somebody in the room says, well, now, let me play devil's advocate. And they start all over again.
Truly a privilege and an honor, George Lewis, to have you on Brand Equity.
Thank you very much.